back in the 1700s. He said, let me see, I'm trying to find it. They don't have it. Oh, it said, here he is. Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes her laws. That's Rothschild. Now, the Rothschild banking system is what gave birth to all banking systems, and now they're all one. So that's why now with Obama in there, and he just said a couple of days ago in his news conference that over $1 trillion deficits will be here for years to come, printing phony money. It's going to eventually, and the sooner the better, that this collapse happens so that we can face reality and get on with life. But to strangle us to death like they're doing with their greed and they're monetizing everything. They monetize prisoners in prison. They've monetized every entity. Did you know that the reservations, the Indian concentration camps, are monetized?
Yes.
If you look on Dun and Bradstreet, Liberty
No, listen,
Mutual.
Russell, I would tell people this 10 years ago or longer that they had bonds, that they were selling derivatives on the people in the prisons, that they have bonds on the number of children, CPS. Now, Native Americans went through this first. Millions of Native children taken, many times killed, sterilized. Now they're doing that to the white children, and suddenly, whites are upset about it because, again, now this predatory system isn't even so much racially based. It's money-based by this international elite, and they are just savaging everyone.
Oh, yes, and but what gets me, it's in their bookkeeping, if they call it that. They call it quasi-money. All this value brought out of thin air, and they put it into financial packages, and it's not based on anything real.
It's fraud.
It's an imaginary value. And yet they sell it around the world in these derivative packages and other financial packages.
Exactly. I mean, at least the glass bead wampum had some visual value, but was still a scam to sell New York. Now they just show you an empty box and say, look at how beautiful it is, and we sell our whole souls, sell our future. So people make fun of the Native Americans, buying the pretty blue and red glass beads and nails and knives and hair combs. But, I mean, we've sold our souls for nothing.
That's exactly right. And, the United States utilizing Israel as their shock troops in the Middle East, that is so pathetic. I've never understood that as soon as there's a scarcity of a natural, some natural resource, they go military. They start the bombing and the taking of prisoners and the slaughters and all of that, only because of the scarcity of a natural resource. It is, instead of creating trade, but it doesn't change with patriarchy. That's the sad part, and that's the dangerous part to our very existence.
Well,
it continues.
Well, Russell, there's a quote I saw on YouTube by a famous chief, isn't it? Can you give us that quote you got memorized?
Yes, that's just before Chief Seattle and the Suquamish people of the Suquamish Nation in and around the state of Washington, just before they were marched off from their homeland to a concentration camp / reservation, he gave a speech. And in that speech, and in part, he said, he was talking to the commissioners from the treaty commissioners from from Washington, D.C., the government. He said, your time of decay may be distant. It's like the waves of the sea. It is the order of nature, and regret is useless. Your time of decay may be distant, but it will surely come. For even the white man's God who walked and talked with him as friend with friend, could not escape our common destiny. We may be brothers after all. We shall see. That's Chief Seattle.
What a prescient statement, understanding that the very evil you're carrying out is going to come back and bite you in the butt.
There you go. And that what goes around comes around.
Yeah, we're going to be brothers in being murdered and enslaved. It's
exactly. And it's sad that when Kerry, and I have no respect for Kerry, the former presidential candidate, the Democratic Center, when he was caught saying words to the effect that if you're poor, you're going to end up in Iraq, and words to that effect. And he was chastised by the national media and forced to apologize. But he's virtually correct. As long as they can keep federal control of the schools and dumbing down America and keep you so dumb and poor that you'll be willing to risk your life for a few crummy dollars that aren't worth anything anyway.
Well, I mean, the public schooling as we know it, with the re-education, the shaved heads, the control, the federal public schooling began for natives. Why don't you briefly explain what the reservation system, what the boarding schools really were? And that's what our public schools with fences and drug dogs and zero tolerance are turning into, and tie that in, as you did eloquently, to the Native American experience. And again, Israel's saying they're carrying that out now against the Palestinians.
Exactly. Every policy. And that's why I say the American people are the American Indians of the 21st century. Because everything that the United States does has been bred and born and practiced on an Indian reservation before exported to the world, and now it's been brought home to roost on the backs of the American people. All these policies, health, education, land policies. Don't you think this credit crunch is getting rid of the family farmers and family ranchers? They are the backbone of America. And yet, we're allowing that to happen because this credit crunch, that's all farms and ranches and family farms run on. So consequently, they're going to be squeezed out, and the corporate farming is coming in. I don't care, right-wing socialism eventually comes around and meets left-wing socialism. It's one and the same. It's just a different application and priority of spending. Now,
it's really just domesticating. I mean, they claim it's socialism, but it's only so big corporations get control, and then say, here's socialism, have a poison blanket, have a smallpox blanket. Now it's have a MMR shot full of cancer viruses.
Very, very definitely, yes. And the boarding school system instituted upon my parents and the Indian people up into, and still there's some boarding schools going on in America today where they're sending.
Sir, as you know, it just came out a few years ago in Canada that they're killing the Native Americans up there and sterilizing them still.
Exactly. And, in a 4-year period in the 70s, the federal government was caught by the American Indian movement and a woman by the name of Dr. Connie Urey, sterilizing 42% of the American Indian women in that 4-year period of childbearing age.
Unbelievable.
42%. At the same time, they did 35% of the Puerto Rican women in Puerto Rico. So this is the policy America has fostered on Americans. And now everybody's getting that. Why is it the populations are going, these manufactured flus, forcing us to take flu shots? And now, we were just absolute slaves with that birth certificate and Social Security card now.
Well, that's why I know you are succeeding, and I hope you succeed big time, so there is a place to go to when everything collapses. But then we know they'll probably just bring military in, but you guys will have a legal right, if they try to get violent, to say no, because you're allowed to pull out of a treaty that's been broken.
Right, but there are other countries that are not wholly a part of the IMF system, the World Bank system of finance. And those countries like Russia, those countries and others that are not part of the banking system, wholeheartedly in the world, are going to have something to say as the United States continues to disintegrate and become part and parcel of the United Nations, you know?
Well,
that's why they hang on to the United Nations, and another reason is that's where they've been shunted. Their empire has been shunted into the United Nations.
It's not just decay. These worms of corruption, you know, before they would at least try to keep the host alive, they got so greedy and so evil, they now basically have killed the host. And all evidence.
Exactly.